In the grim darkness of the far future, even victory comes at a terrible price. Our story begins at dawn on a ruined world just wrested from the clutches of chaos. Billowing smoke clings to a broken horizon. The silhouette of a once proud city lies shattered against a blood-red sunrise. I stand amid smoldering ruins and broken idols, the acrid scent of ozone and burnt flesh heavy in the air. This is Imperial liberation, harsh, absolute, and not at all the triumphant parade one might imagine. In a slightly sardonic twist, the first thing one learns about being saved by the Imperium is that it hardly feels like salvation at all. I invite you to witness what truly happens after the shooting stops, when a world's fate hangs in the balance and the real struggle for its soul begins. Some may question your right to destroy 10 billion people. Those who understand know that you have no right to let them live. Ancient proverb often attributed to the Inquisition. This planet now lies in ruin. For years it groaned under the boot of chaos, its citizens terrorized by heretic warlords and demonic nightmares. Now the Imperium has taken it back. The worst is over, or so the exhausted survivors might think. The Imperial Aquila flags rise again over blasted hab blocks, but they cast long shadows on a populace that has seen hell and now faces the Emperor's uncompromising judgment. The day of liberation, from ashes to administratum. The final battle ended mere hours ago. The Astra Militarum regiments and space marines who delivered this world from chaos are still tallying their dead. In the rubble of the capital hive, ragged civilians slowly emerge from hiding like ghosts, wide-eyed, emaciated, unsure whether to cheer or cower. Here and there, clusters of survivors huddle under the watch of stern-faced Imperial guardsmen. Liberation has come, but it arrives with barked orders and leveled bolt guns. In a bitter twist of fate, the very armies that saved the people now corral them into makeshift holding camps. On the ruined cathedral square, a veteran commissar stands atop a burnt-out tank, using a magnifier to project his voice over the crowd. "Citizens, by decree of the Holy Inquisition, you are ordered to assemble for processing. Compliance is not optional." There is little rejoicing, only the shuffling of tired feet and muffled sobs. The people of this planet have traded one terror for another. Yesterday it was the Chaos Overlords. Today it is the black uniformed agents of their distant emperor. Already signs of the battle's atrocity scar every surface. Once grand statues of the God Emperor lie decapitated, replaced by obscene chaos icons that the liberators now furiously tear down. Banner poles that once flew the sigils of dark gods are being hauled down and burnt. In their place, the Imperial Aquila is raised high, but it flutters over a city of the dead. Piles of corpses, human and otherwise, line the main thoroughfares, awaiting disposal. Many are civilians caught in the crossfire or murdered in ritual slaughter by the heretics. Emaciated children cling to equally gaunt mothers, too numb to weep. The first relief tents appear, staffed by Medicae priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus, distributing watered-down recaf and litanies of comfort. The survivors drink the tepid broth and parrot back prayers to the Emperor, unsure if they've been saved or simply conquered anew. Above, the sky is thick with Imperial Navy craft. Valkyrie airlifters roar overhead, deploying fresh platoons of armed soldiers to secure key infrastructure. The Imperial flag, a tattered, soot-stained Aquila, is planted atop the ruins of the governor's palace, a symbol that Imperial order has ostensibly been restored. But on the ground, order looks more like martial law. Curfews are imposed before the first post-liberation night even falls. Anyone found wandering after dark without authorization is likely to be shot on sight. Such are the wages of freedom in the Imperium. For the common folk, fear mingles with relief. A middle-aged hab worker, face streaked with ash, whispers to her neighbor in the processing queue, "We made it. Emperor be praised, we made it." Her neighbor, a one-armed former PDF conscript who survived months of chaos labor camps, merely gives a hollow stare. He knows there's no guarantee he'll see tomorrow, even under Imperial authority. All around the newly liberated exchange wary glances. They have heard stories, dark rumors that the Inquisition sometimes cleanses worlds even after victory. Whispers spread that an exterminatus was narrowly averted, and indeed, high above in orbit, an inquisitorial ship still looms, its silos stocked with cyclonic torpedoes that could, if ordered, reduce all life below to cinders. No one will say it aloud, but every survivor wonders, will the Imperium truly let us live? The answer, at least for now, is yes, with conditions. Exterminatus is a last resort reserved only for worlds too far gone or too strategically unimportant to reclaim. Tertius is valuable, a hive world with millions of skilled hands and manufactories that the Imperium needs. The price of retaking it was high, but deemed worth paying. To simply purge it entirely would be a waste except in the most extreme scenario. And so the Inquisition has stayed its hand. The world will be purged not by orbital fire, but inch by inch on the ground. For the survivors, that means their true test is about to begin. Purging the heretic Inquisitorial justice unleashed. With the guns of war silenced, a new kind of gunfire begins at dawn. Crack! A single last shot echoes down a boulevard of gutted habs. A commissar has summarily executed a man in the registration line after he muttered a prayer to the wrong emperor, perhaps a chaos-tainted one. This is the opening salvo of the Inquisition's purge. The Imperium has no intention of blindly trusting those who lived under chaos rule. Every civilian, PDF trooper, and even Imperial guardsman who fought here is now a potential suspect in the Inquisition's eyes. The logic is brutally simple. Anyone could carry the taint of chaos. The Inquisitorial forces on world are led by a hard-eyed Ordo Hereticus Inquisitor, flanked by power-armored Sisters of Battle from the Ecclesiarchy and black-armored stormtroopers. They waste no time. Across every survivor camp and hive sector, loyalty screenings commence. Men and women are ordered to kneel in the rubble of the civic plaza as confessors stride down the lines swinging incense and reciting the litany of purgation. Confess, they demand. Those who hesitate or stammer out half-truths are swiftly pulled aside by inquisitorial agents for further questioning, a euphemism for torture or instant execution. In the field infirmary, an old woman whimpers in pain from a shrapnel wound. A Medicae priest tends her wounds kindly, then, with equal devotion, checks her body for any witch marks or chaos tattoos. On finding a strange symbol burned into her forearm, the mark of a forced cult branding weeks ago, the priest quietly signals a nearby Arbeits officer. The woman is gently lifted onto a stretcher and wheeled not to a recovery tent, but to a discreet execution pit behind the Medicae station. A laspistol shot ends her misery before the hour is out. Such small mercies are common now. The Imperium prefers to release the Emperor's mercy upon those even suspected of corruption. Mass purges soon follow. The Inquisitor has decreed that the entire remaining population must undergo ritual cleansing and verification. At gunpoint, thousands of survivors are marched out of the city ruins to a giant makeshift camp of barbed wire and floodlights set up in a former agri-zone. Arcoflagellants, horrific cyborg penitents, prowl the perimeters, twitching and reciting scripture in distorted metallic voices. Overhead, servo-skull drones, floating human skulls fitted with cameras and loudspeakers, blare pre-recorded warnings. Shelter in designated areas. Any unauthorized movement will be met with lethal force. Praise be the God Emperor. Inside the camp, the process is methodical and pitiless. Each refugee is catalogued by the administratum scribe's name, former occupation, any known association with the heretic regime. Fingerprints and gene scans are taken. Those with abnormal readings or mutations, even minor ones, like unusual eye coloration or extra digits, are separated immediately. We see one young man, a former factory worker, flagged for having a tiny vestigial horn on his skull, likely a mutation from warp exposure. He pleads that he was born with it, that he hid it all his life to avoid the heretic's attention. His cries fall on deaf ears as he's dragged to the sanctuary pens. In less polite terms, these are mass execution holding areas. Not all can be saved, the Inquisition reasons, and any who show signs of warp touch must be dealt with. The rationale echoes grim Imperial doctrine. Better to kill a few now than risk countless later. Indeed, one Imperial commander famously put it thus after a similar war. Better to sterilize or kill millions on suspicion of chaos taint than to have to eventually kill billions to prevent its spread. Such cold calculus is being applied ruthlessly here. In the camp's makeshift courthouses, little more than administratum prefab shelters, impromptu tribunals try case after case in assembly line fashion. A scribe reads charges. A robed inquisitorial interrogator peers intently, perhaps aided by a psyker to sense guilt. Verdicts are swift. Guilty. Corrupt. Tainted. Guilty. The punishment is almost always death or lifelong servitude. Occasionally, someone is found redeemable, usually meaning they are sent to a penal workforce or mind-wiped for reprogramming rather than executed outright. We watch as a middle-aged man, a former city administrator who survived by collaborating, under duress, with the Chaos Governor, begs for mercy. He insists he sabotaged the heretics whenever he could, that he secretly saved Imperial records from destruction. The interrogator listens, impassive. Without a word, she nods to a silent Adeptus Astartes in gray power armor looming in the corner. A gray knight's space marine, blade in hand. In one clean stroke, the man's head is lopped off. The Inquisition's judgment is final. There will be no lengthy appeals or investigations. Mercy is a rarity. Certainty of guilt is not required when lives are at stake. As harsh as it seems, this approach follows the Inquisition's long-standing policy. If there is even a chance an individual has been compromised by the ruinous powers, it's far safer to eliminate them than to risk a hidden corruption festering. In countless historical incidents, when Imperial forces encounter demons or chaos, surviving witnesses are often executed or mind-wiped en masse for precisely this reason. Congratulations, dear survivors. You have been deemed fortunate enough to avoid exterminatus. Instead, you get to prove your innocence under pain of death. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of the Purge is its clinical thoroughness. Every building and tunnel of the city is being scoured. Teams of armed Inquisitorial stormtroopers move block by block, flamer units in hand, burning any blasphemous texts, idols, or chaos shrines left behind. In the shattered Grand Library, piles of books and data slates that were tainted with heretical lore are set alight. The crackling flames consume knowledge both foul and fair. The Imperium would rather burn a world's entire history than let a single scrap of chaos scripture remain. Deep in the Underhive, Adeptus Arbite's shock teams hunt surviving Chaos cultists who fled the battle. We follow one such raid in our mind's eye. Arbites, clad in heavy carapace armor, kicking down a rusted hatch to reveal a hidden shrine where a dozen starved cultists are hiding. The cultists shriek praises to dark gods and lunge with makeshift blades. It's over in seconds. Shotgun blasts and power mauls silence the den. No prisoners are taken. The Arbites systematically incinerate the corpses, heads removed and burned separately, as per the Codex procedures to prevent any lingering demonic influence in the bodies. They mark the site with a red X symbol, indicating the area has been cleansed. Multiply this scene by hundreds across the planet. Chaos nests rooted out one by one. Amid the carnage, a peculiar ritual plays out with each purge. Before an execution or structured demolition, a priest of the Ecclesiarchy is always present to recite rites of purification. We see an Adeptus Mechanicus confessor raising a gilded Aquila icon as a traitor regiment's survivors are lined up for the firing squad. "By the Emperor's light, may your souls be pardoned in death," he intones. The prisoners, some sobbing, some defiant, are then mown down by a volley of lass fire. Immediately after, servitors move in to douse the bodies and the firing wall with holy consecrated oils. The message: even in killing, the Imperium seeks to purify. It is grisly, yes, but it is also dogmatic. In the eyes of the faithful, these extreme measures aren't cruelty, they are salvation. History provides precedent for all of this. The First War for Armageddon is a classic example often cited in hushed whispers by Imperial officials. After that world was saved from a demon Primarch, the Inquisition conducted sweeping purges of the population. Entire hive cities were evacuated under false pretenses, told they were being moved for their safety, only to be sterilized or imprisoned in labor camps out of fear that Chaos Taint lurked among them. Millions of loyal soldiers who fought bravely were sequestered and slated for processing, just like on Tertius. For the common Imperial citizen, being a hero offers no immunity from suspicion. The same fate can await the liberator and the liberated if either has been touched by the enemy. On Solace Tertius, this means even some of the planetary defense forces, PDF, who resisted chaos are under the microscope. Those PDF troopers who survived the war are disarmed and segregated in a different holding pen. They thought they'd be lauded as freedom fighters. Instead, they face interrogations about why they didn't die to the last man. If you lived while others perished, perhaps the dark gods spared you for a reason. An inquisitorial acolyte sneers at them. It's a cruel accusation. These soldiers fought valiantly for the Emperor, but doubt is the Inquisition's bread and wine. Until proven beyond any doubt, no one is above suspicion. There is, however, a hierarchy in the Purge. Space Marines of the Adeptus Astartes who took part in the liberation are largely exempt from local inquisitorial trials. The Inquisition trusts the chapters to self-scrutinize, and indeed, some chapters have their own secret rites to purge any chaos influence. The few Space Marines still planetside, likely doing last sweeps for any surviving Chaos champions, receive curt respect from the Inquisitor. After all, it was the Astartes who made victory possible. One can sense a tense undercurrent, though. The Grey Knights, those mysterious demon-hunting Space Marines, are rumored to be present, and if they are, no one, not even fellow Imperial forces, is entirely safe from purging. The Grey Knights have a dark reputation for mind-wiping or eliminating Imperial allies who witness their battles against the Warp, to keep the secrets of chaos and the chapter itself hidden. In one corner of the starport, a cadre of battle-weary Imperial Guard troopers who had unknowingly fought alongside Grey Knights against a summoned demon are quietly led away by black-armored figures. Moments later, distant explosions rock an isolated section of the camp, an accidental ammo detonation, the official report will say. Those guardsmen were likely disposed of for their own good, a fate not uncommon in inquisitorial cleanup operations. As the purge rages on, a palpable atmosphere of terror mixed with grim resolution blankets the planet. "We have saved you," the Imperium declares, "but now you must be worthy of salvation." The survivors internalize this message quickly. Some respond by over-demonstrating their piety and loyalty, hoping to escape scrutiny. Everywhere you look, weary people press their hands together and shout praises to the Emperor with cracked voices, as if sheer zeal can erase any suspicion of heresy. Parents force their traumatized children to recite the catechisms of faith before the roving inquisitorial patrols arrive. Better the child stumbles over a holy verse now, in private, than in front of an interrogator who might take a mistake as evidence of impiety. Under the watchful gaze of skull probes and bolter-armed sisters, neighbors turn on neighbors in a bid to appear righteous. "I saw her speaking to a demon," one woman suddenly shrieks, pointing at her lifelong friend. The accused friend, eyes wide in betrayal, vehemently denies it. Who is telling the truth? It hardly matters. The friend is dragged off by Sisters of Battle for investigation, and the accuser crosses herself, loudly proclaiming, "I serve only the Golden Throne." In this atmosphere, false accusations fester, but ironically, the Inquisition doesn't mind. Better that 100 innocents are denounced than one traitor goes unnoticed. The few actual Chaos collaborators who remain hidden attempt to blend in with the frenzy of devotion. But the irony is that the most fanatical displays of zeal often invite the Inquisition's hardest scrutiny. It's a deadly tightrope. Appear too reluctant, you're a heretic. Appear too devout, maybe you're overcompensating, also heretical. The average citizen has never navigated such a perilous test of loyalty. Many simply break under the pressure, confessing to crimes they never committed, implicating others just in the desperate hope of appeasing their inquisitors. This is chaos in its own way, not the arch-enemy's warp-spawned insanity, but the orderly chaos of imperial justice, where fear and paranoia run rampant under the thin guise of law and faith. Yet, cruel as it is, it's working. Within weeks, the organized chaos resistance on Solace Tertius is obliterated. Cult leaders are dead or in chains, hidden shrines are reduced to ashes, and no whisper of heresy dares slip past the lips of the surviving populace. The planet is being purged of both sin and sinner. As an Imperial commentator, I must note that while history records these events in sanitized terms like comprehensive pacification or post-battle chastisement, living through it is another matter entirely. The people of Tertius, those that survive this purge, will never forget the dual horror of occupation and liberation. They have looked into the eyes of monsters and also into the eyes of those sent to save them, and in both they found an unsparing ruthlessness. In the end, as night falls on this day of reckoning, thousands lie dead by Imperial hands. Yet, the Inquisition deems the operation a success. The cancer is cut away. The survivors in the camps are exhausted, terrified, but ostensibly pure, or at least too scared to ever admit otherwise. Thus concludes the first phase of reclaiming a world from chaos. Purge and purify by blade and bolter. Tomorrow will bring reconstruction and redemption, but only because today the judgment of the Emperor was carried out without mercy. The Vox casters crackle across the camp with a final nightly benediction. The Emperor's work is done this day. Sleep in his light, lest darkness find you again. It's doubtful anyone sleeps soundly in those floodlit pens, but at least for the first time in memory, the howls of demons and traitors are absent from the night. They have been replaced by the stern lullaby of Imperial order, a fearful quiet broken only by distant hymns and the crackle of funeral pyres. Cleansing the Taint tech priests and Terraformation. At first light, new figures in crimson robes descend upon the ravaged cities and poisoned wilds of Solace Tertius. These are the emissaries of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the tech priests of Mars, and they have come to perform their own brand of purification. While the Inquisition roots out living heresy, the Mechanicus addresses the physical and technological corruption left in chaos's wake. Their censor mechadendrites swinging incense, and their monotone voices reciting the ritual of cleansing. Every machine, every data cogitator, every vehicle that was touched by the heretics is suspect. The Mechanicus adepts scan the broken forges with arrays of blinking Auspex devices. They detect traces of warp contamination. Perhaps the heretics had inscribed profane runes on the assembly lines or infected the logic engines with scrap code demonic viruses. The senior Magos clacks in binary cant to his subordinates, and they spring into action. Robot servitors lumber forward carrying promethium tanks and plasma cutters. With a great hiss, they begin melting down corrupted machinery to slag right on the spot. The tech priests intone prayers as molten metal pools at their feet. Purify the steel, sanctify the forge, they chant. Any corrupted buildings, war gear, or common machinery is not spared. If it was touched by chaos, it is to be unmade utterly, reduced to raw materials that can later be recast anew. The idea is simple. Better to destroy and rebuild than to risk one cog of chaos taint remaining. We observe the fate of a once mighty plasma reactor deep in the city's core. This reactor powered half the hive. Now its conduits are wrapped in spiked chains and 8-pointed star sigils left by the heretics. The Mechanicus declares it perditus extremis, beyond saving. Workers in heavy hazard suits move in, placing melter bombs at key support struts. Boom! The entire reactor is brought down in a controlled implosion, sending a column of dust and vaporized metal into the sky. The Mechanicus overseers record the event in their logs with detached satisfaction. They will build a new reactor in time, one free of defilement. Outside the city, the planet's soil itself bears scars of corruption. In one region, the heretics performed dark rituals that turned the once fertile fields into withered, blighted land. Sickly purple vegetation, mutated by warp energy, chokes the landscape. The Mechanicus' Magos Biologist contingent arrives to address this. They dispatch bio-cleansers, specialized servitor drones that crawl across the ground, spraying clouds of neutralizing agents. The soil smokes as these holy chemicals do their work. Contaminated topsoil is excavated by massive crawler machines, which then incinerate it in mobile plasma furnaces. It's a form of geopurification. In extreme cases, the Mechanicus might even alter the environment on a large scale, a miniature terraformation effort to undo chaos's damage. If chaos turned rivers to literal blood or the air to poisonous fog, the tech priests will set up atmospheric scrubbers and blessed filtration units. They may seed the clouds with reagents to precipitate pure rain and flush out pollutants. They treat the planet as one vast wounded machine in need of repair. One striking scene unfolds in the central plaza of the capital, where a massive warp portal had briefly been opened during the war. Although the portal was closed, it left an ugly scar in reality, an area of unnatural cold and flickering light with gravity slightly askew. The Mechanicus, in cooperation with the Ordo Malleus Inquisition, cordons off this zone with hexagrammic wards, powerful anti-demonic symbols etched onto towering pylons. A coven of sanctioned psychers is brought in under heavy guard. Their task is to perform a planetary exorcism of sorts, an echo of legendary events like the exorcism of Opridia, where 1,000,000 demon hosts were cast out by combined Inquisitorial and Astartes efforts. Here, fortunately, no demons remain, only a wound in the fabric of reality. The psychers form a circle and begin chanting the rites of detestation, forbidden rituals known only to a few, famously used by the Exorcist's Space Marine chapter in such dire cases. As they chant, the very air shimmers. Regular humans feel nauseated standing near. A couple of guardsmen vomit or faint from the psychic backlash. But after several hours, the warp scar recedes. The eerie lights fade, the temperature normalizes. When the psychers are done, some lie dead from the strain, their eyes burned out. But the lingering echo of the warp is gone. The area is immediately sanctified. A troop of sororitas, sisters of battle, marches through swinging incense and singing hymns, driving out any last shadows of the Imperium. The Adeptus Mechanicus also pays keen attention to STC fragments or any technology the heretics tampered with. If the Chaos occupation led to modifications of machinery, perhaps dark tech heresy, like integrating demonic components or forbidden Xenos tech, the Mechanicus will have a dual response. Recover and study anything novel, but destroy anything too corrupted. We glimpse a moment in a ruined research facility. A tech priest gingerly picks up a twisted piece of circuitry that once belonged to a dark mechanicum device. He examines it with mechanized eyes. Though it's heretical, it might hold knowledge. Likely he'll have it shipped off-world to the Mechanicus forges, where radical tech priests can analyze it under quarantine. In secret, the Mechanicus hates to waste knowledge, even forbidden knowledge, but they'll never admit to studying it openly. Meanwhile, anything blatantly tainted, say a cogitator that screams with a bound demon inside, is thoroughly destroyed. There are cases in lore where entire vaults of archaeotech were sealed or nuked because chaos had touched them. The Mechanicus on Solace will not hesitate to do the same if needed. Let's not forget the looming environmental toll of both the war and the purge. The heretics may have unleashed toxins or summoned warp-spawned creatures that ravaged the ecosystem. In one Agri hamlet, villagers whisper that the local well water turned to blood during the occupation, a literal manifestation of chaos. To fix such horrors, the Mechanicus employ magos hydrologists to cleanse water sources. We see them dumping vats of alchemical reagents into the poisoned wells, their servo skulls taking water samples every hour to gauge improvement. Gradually, the water clears of its crimson stain, though no one who saw that miracle of blood will ever trust a drink from that well again. Terraforming on a post-war world can also mean reintroducing life where needed. If certain regions were scorched or rendered barren by exterminatus light actions like viral bombardment or heavy ordnance, the Imperium might attempt to regrow them. For a hive world like Solace Tertius, the priority is less on nature and more on making zones habitable for industry and habitation again. Still, Mechanicus biologists release hardy fungi and algae strains into the soil, life forms engineered to absorb pollutants and produce oxygen, a first step to rehabilitating the environment. In the upper atmosphere, swarms of maintenance servitors, some resembling mechanized birds, disperse chemicals to patch the ozone and clear the lingering clouds of war. One cannot overlook the symbolic acts of cleansing, too. The Ecclesiarchy often works alongside the Mechanicus here. For instance, Consider the great Chaos Temple that the heretics built from the bones of the city's Imperial church. Standing 30 meters tall, made of cracked marble and stained with innocent blood, it's an affront to all that is holy. The tech priests could easily implode it, but the Ecclesiarchy insists on a ritual demolition. So, a procession of priests and faithful, survivors deemed pure enough to participate, approaches the profane structure at noon. They carry with them a revered relic, perhaps a shard of a saint's bone, and as they circle the temple, they chant the rite of castigation. "Not one stone upon another shall remain," the head cardinal proclaims, "for this house was built on blasphemy." At the final shout of "Imperator Volt," the emperor wills it. Demolition charges are triggered. The Chaos Temple collapses in a thunderous roar, dust billowing. The watching crowd, survivors and soldiers alike, cries tears of relief and joy as the spiked towers and grinning gargoyles crumble to dust. In the debris place, the Ecclesiarchy immediately plants a tall wooden cross bearing the aquila and a banner that reads Puritas. It's a temporary marker, but a promise. A new cathedral will rise here one day, but not yet. First, the ground itself will be reconsecrated. The rubble is carted off, piece by piece, to be dumped into a sunken pit and incinerated with promethium. No trace of the enemy's monuments can remain. The Adeptus Mechanicus are ostensibly engineers, but their every action is shrouded in ritual and superstition. To the lay observer, it looks like priests exorcising a demon from a machine, and essentially that's exactly what it is. Logic and mysticism meld in the 41st millennium. When a tech priest declares a sector clear of physical taint, a confessor stands beside him to declare it spiritually clean as well. Only then can reconstruction truly begin. Now, post-war rebuilding can properly commence on cleared ground. We watch as servitor labor crews, mindless cyborg workers, move in to clear wreckage that's been blessed and approved for reuse. Gigantic cranes, themselves anointed with purity seals, lift girders and rock-crete chunks, forming piles of raw materials. Reclamator units sift through to salvage anything structurally sound. Resource reallocation kicks in. Intact steel beams from collapsed habs will be melted down to forge new ones. Promethium fuel caches seized from the enemy are repurposed to power Imperial generators. The Administratum, always thinking of the ledger, has dispatched Masters to calculate how the ruins might contribute to Imperial needs. For example, if vast swaths of the population died, which they did, there may now be a surplus of stored food or water that can be shipped off-world to nearby war fronts. Or the opposite. If farms are scorched, aid shipments might be requested from other systems to prevent mass starvation in the short term. Amid the city, the Astra Militarum engineering corps assists the Mechanicus in certain tasks. They erect prefab field shelters to house survivors whose homes were destroyed, at least until more permanent housing is built, or until they're shipped elsewhere. In a show of pragmatic compassion, some Imperial Guard units set up field kitchens, serving ration gruel to both soldiers and civilians. This isn't purely benevolent. A fed populace is less likely to riot or cause trouble during the purges and reconstruction. Still, to a starving child, a bowl of synth-nutrient soup from a guardsman is a godsend. We see an officer pat a child's head awkwardly as she wolfs down her first full meal in weeks. The officer offers a rare smile and a devotional pamphlet. Both sustenance and the Imperial Creed must be distributed liberally now. Beyond the city, the Mechanicus also addresses infrastructure. Bridges blown out by fighting are quickly replaced with temporary spans flown in from orbit. The railway lines that transport ore and goods, sabotaged by retreating cultists, are being repaired by long trains of servitors that automatically lay new track. Adeptus Mechanicus Logis. Engines analyze the planet's production facilities, marking which can be brought back online soon and which must be rebuilt from scratch. The goal is clear: restore the planet's contribution to the Imperium as quickly as possible. On Solace Tertius, that means hive factories turning out Las gunpowder packs and armor plate for the Imperial Guard. Every day they remain offline is a day the war effort elsewhere suffers. Thus the tech priests work without rest, plugging themselves into data ports, communing with the machine spirits to soothe their trauma from Chaos's violation. One poignant scene: a senior Magos Mechanicus stands before a shattered Night Titan hangar. Inside lies the wreck of a noble Imperial Nightwalker, fallen in battle against a demon engine. The Magos extends a mechadendrite to touch the knight's hull reverently. In binary, he whispers, "Fear not, blessed engine. We will rebuild you." It's not just sentiment. The Imperium truly will recover and repair such war machines if possible. Parts are catalogued. Tech adepts swarm over the husk. Perhaps one day that knight's chassis will stride to war again, its machine spirit purged of the shame of defeat. As the cleansing phase wraps up, Tertius looks oddly both worse and better. Huge sections of cities have been leveled intentionally, creating even more rubble. But what remains standing is, at last, free of blasphemy. The air is cleaner, except for ash from funeral pyres. Rivers run clear, except where clogged with debris that engineers are filtering out. The sky's unnatural war storm clouds disperse, revealing a pale sun. The planet is scarred, but healing begins. The Mechanicus declares the physical taint of chaos purged to the extent mortally possible. They will remain to monitor for any recurrence geosensors, and Auspex arrays will stay planted across key sites to watch for anomalous readings, ready to alert if, Emperor forbid, any resurgence of warp energy is detected. In the end, the cleansing of a reclaimed world is as total as the Imperium can make it. Not just the people, but the very stones and soil have been judged, and if necessary, purged by flame or acid. The Ordo Malleus might phrase it as exorcising the demons, and the Mechanicus as reformatting the system. But either way, the motto stands: leave no trace of chaos unscathed. Thus, with the heretical filth scoured away physically and spiritually, the stage is set for the next movement in this grand, grim symphony: reconstruction and re-education. The world has been cleansed by blood and fire. Now it must be rebuilt and brought back into the Imperial fold. Rebuilding faith, the Ecclesiarchy's holy crusade. Even as the smoke of battle clears and the crackle of purge fires dies down, a new sound rises over Solace Tertius: the peal of bells and the chorus of hymns. The Adeptus Mechanicus, the Ecclesiarchy of the Imperial Church, moves to center stage. If the Mechanicus cleansed the world's body, the Ecclesiarchy will cleanse its soul. They descend in force: dour confessors, silver-tongued missionaries, and armored sisters of battle, Adepta Sororitas, carrying icons and relics. Portable shrines are erected on street corners, still littered with shell casings. Makeshift altars adorn the camps where survivors huddle. The message is clear: the Emperor is here, through his church, to reclaim the hearts of the people. The first Sunday after liberation is declared a day of reconsecration. All surviving citizens are commanded, for their own good, naturally, to attend mass prayer at dawn. Picture this: under the open sky, the grand cathedrals are all in ruins after all. Tens of thousands of people kneel on the broken ground of the capital's main square. Many still wear the same dirty, blood-stained clothes from the war. Some are bandaged, leaning on crutches. Surrounded by the blackened shells of government buildings, they await the sermon. At the front, atop the rubble that once was the planetary governor's statue, an Ecclesiarchy cardinal stands flanked by torchbearers. He is resplendent in robes of pure white and scarlet, a contrast to the ashen scene, holding aloft a massive golden Aquila symbol. His voice amplified by a choir of servo skulls, the cardinal leads them in the litany of thanksgiving. "Praise be to the God Emperor, who in his mercy delivered you from evil," he cries. The crowd responds, weakly at first, then louder. "Praise be to him." This call and response continues, the cardinal's tone swelling with fiery passion. He speaks of the planet's fall as a punishment for straying from the Emperor's light, and its reclamation as a testament to the Emperor's forgiveness, if his people prove worthy. Then comes a crucial ritual, the reaffirmation of faith. One by one, survivors are invited, which is to say required, to come forward and swear an oath of loyalty to the Emperor and abjure chaos in all forms. A weary mother carrying an infant steps up. She's shaking. Perhaps her husband consorted with the heretics to keep their family safe, a fact she has desperately hidden. The cardinal gently places a hand on her head and asks her to repeat, "I reject the dark. I embrace the light. My soul is the Emperor's, now and forever." Tears stream down her face as she echoes the words. With a smile, he blesses her child with a touch of holy water on the brow. That baby will be baptized into the Imperial creed on this day, effectively washing away the taint of being born under chaos rule. Another man comes, a former PDF trooper with haunted eyes. "Do you repent of any doubt, any heresy you harbored?" the confessor demands of him. The soldier hesitates. He did curse the Emperor in a moment of despair during the occupation. Terrified, he blurts out, Yes, I repent it." The confessor nods to a sororitas sister who produces a red-hot brand from a brazier. Quick as lightning, they sear a small Aquila symbol onto the man's forearm. He cries out in pain but also relief. This mark indicates he has been forgiven through suffering. The faithful around him applaud haltingly. It's understood that this was both penance and proof. Proof that pain means purity. Many others will line up for similar treatment, some out of genuine guilt, others in a performative show of zeal to remove any lingering doubt about their loyalty. The Ecclesiarchy doesn't stop at ceremonies. They begin a comprehensive program of re-education. The Administratum sets up re-indoctrination camps, separate from the Inquisition's interrogation camps. In these large tents and prefab habs, citizens attend daily sessions where priests and instructors teach the truth according to Imperial doctrine. Massive banners with the Emperor's image, stern yet benevolent, hang on every wall. The curriculum is simple. The Imperial creed, the righteousness of the Emperor, the infallibility of his rule, the evil of chaos, and the destiny of mankind to suffer and triumph in his name. Those raised under Imperial rule will recognize these as basic tenets, but remember, an entire generation on this planet may have been fed lies by chaos. They must effectively be deprogrammed. We peek into a re-education class. A stern deacon stands at a chalkboard scrawled with the opening lines of the Lectitio Divinitatis, the holy book about the Emperor's divinity. Dozens of youths, ages, perhaps 12 to 16, are seated on the floor, as any chairs were likely burnt or broken. These children lived their formative years under chaos occupation. Some were taught to venerate dark gods. Now, they're told all that was false. Some listen eagerly. Kids are adaptable. Many are just happy the war is over. But a few frown, confused or sullen. The deacon asks a boy, "Who is your savior?" The correct answer is the Emperor of Mankind. The boy hesitates. He remembers his parents secretly praying to some other deity for deliverance. Perhaps he even murmurs that name. Immediately, two hulking Sisters Hospitaller, the non-militant sisters specializing in healing and correction, step forward and drag him out. The class is told he's going for special catechism. The lesson is clear to all. There is only one correct faith here. Those taken for special catechism experience something rather Orwellian, a mix of hypnosis, psycho-conditioning, and good old fear. In small chambers, they might be strapped to a chair, forced to watch imagery of Imperial saints and chaos demons flashing in sequence, with electric shocks delivered when the chaos symbols appear, and soothing music when the Emperor appears. It's crude, but across the Imperium, these methods have been used to instill reflexive hatred of heresy. After a few days, that boy will break down, sobbing, begging to serve the Emperor. Only then he is returned to class, often to show off his newfound fervor as an example. Adults undergo their own indoctrination rituals. Work gangs clearing rubble sing synchronized hymns, led by a junior priest with a whip to lash anyone who isn't keeping up the pious lyrics. In the evenings, the camps have mandatory inspirational testimonies, where individuals stand up and publicly renounce their past mistakes and praise the Emperor's grace for giving them a second chance. This public confession both humbles them and bonds them to the new order. The Ecclesiarchy knows the psychology. Communal faith-building turns a disparate, traumatized crowd into a unified congregation. It can be oddly uplifting in a way. Humans crave meaning, and after a nightmare, here is clear meaning. We survived because the Emperor saved us, and we must live righteously to deserve it. Many latch on to that with fervor, if only to make sense of all the senseless death. Places of worship are swiftly being restored or created anew where needed. Remember the Chaos Temple that was demolished? Already plans for a grand cathedral of redemption on that very site are drafted, but construction will take time. So in the interim, the Ecclesiarchy erects a field chapel there. It's a large pavilion tent, but decorated lavishly with whatever icons and reliquaries they have. We see Sisters of Battle carefully placing a gilded reliquary said to hold a fragment of Saint Dominica's armor on the makeshift altar. Pilgrims, yes, they are now encouraged to think of themselves as pilgrims rather than refugees, line up to touch it and receive a blessing. Rumor spreads that the relic miraculously survived the Chaos occupation, hidden by faithful hands. Whether that's true or not, it inspires hope that the Emperor never abandoned this world entirely. The power of faith acts also as a form of therapy for trauma, intentionally or not. People sing, pray, cry together. They share stories of how they kept believing even in the darkest times. Some might be embellishments or outright fabrications encouraged by the Church, but they serve to strengthen morale. A young woman recounts how she painted an Aquila on her basement wall and hid her children there, believing one day the Emperor's angels would come. And indeed they did, in the form of space marines. The crowd applauds and shouts, "Ave Imperator." These sessions gradually turn a population fearful of the Imperium after the purges into a population fiercely grateful to it. It's a psychological pivot. Earlier, they obeyed out of terror. Now they begin to obey out of genuine devotion, or at least a need to belong to the winning side spiritually. The Ecclesiarchy also cleanses faith itself. Any chaotic or deviating religious practice discovered is destroyed. If cult idols or texts were missed in the initial purge, the Ministorum zealots will sniff them out. They conduct house-to-house sanctifications. Priests enter each remaining home, what homes still stand or tents if not, and perform blessings. Homeowners are expected to present any personal shrines or holy items for inspection. Many households had secret household shrines to the emperor pre-occupation. If they managed to hide them from chaos, these are now proudly dusted off and displayed again. In some cases, ironically, families who lost faith are now given icons and rosaries by the church to jumpstart their piety. We should mention the fate of the planetary governor and ruling class. Under chaos, either the original governor was killed or turned traitor. If any of the old nobility survived and are deemed loyal, they too must show extreme contrition. Often, the Inquisition would have executed any high-ranking officials as a precaution. In Armageddon's case, even the victorious Imperial Guard commanders were sterilized and exiled. On Solace Tertius, let's assume the entire pre-war government is gone. The Ecclesiarchy might step into the power vacuum temporarily. It's not uncommon for a cardinal or confessor to act as interim planetary authority after a chaos purge, especially if the administratum hasn't assigned a new governor yet. In effect, the world is put under a theocratic provisional government. Law is heavily influenced by religious decree, which in the Imperium is not so different from normal law, but here it's in hyperdrive. Curfews might be announced as hours of holy repose, and punishments for infractions include compulsory prayer or pilgrimages on knees across rocky ground, in addition to floggings or executions for serious offenses. Faith is also used as a test of loyalty. Those who enthusiastically participate in worship are noted and rewarded, perhaps given lighter work duties or better rations. Those who lag or seem apathetic, well, an Inquisition informant might be listening, ready to put their name on a list for follow-up. The Imperium doesn't separate secular and sacred. Loyalty to the Emperor is loyalty to the Imperium. Thus, these grand religious displays serve a dual purpose: to genuinely restore spiritual hope and to act as yet another filter for any hidden malcontents. We cannot ignore the role of miracles, or at least events framed as miracles. It is quite possible that during the war or liberation, something extraordinary occurred which the Ecclesiarchy will seize upon. Perhaps a statue of the Emperor in the main square somehow remained intact while everything around it was destroyed. Or a notable heretic leader was struck down by lightning out of a clear sky. There are reports of such occurrences in war random events claimed as divine intervention. The Ecclesiarchy will canonize these stories. They might declare a new local saint. For instance, an old priest who led a band of townsfolk to safety in the sewers and never renounced the emperor. He died of exhaustion right when rescue came. Now they dub him Blessed Martyr Alric of Solace. His body is exhumed and pieces of his clothing become holy relics distributed to churches. The populace is taught to venerate him as a sign the emperor was with them even under occupation. This fosters pride in their own local identity as redeemed people. The Ministorum also loves a good procession. Soon after liberation, once security is stable, they organize a triumphant parade through the capital's safer streets. But instead of tanks, well, a few tanks might roll too, draped in Ecclesiarchy banners. The stars of this parade are icons and reliquaries. We see the statue of the Emperor Victorious, hastily welded together from pieces of chaos idols, literally repurposing the enemy's art into a towering likeness of the Emperor crushing a snake underfoot. It's crude but symbolically potent. This statue is carted around while people throw flower petals or scraps of paper with written prayers, since flowers might be scarce, and cry out praises. Behind it, choir children, orphaned by the war but now clad in clean white robes, sing the Te Deum Imperator. A line of newly purified citizens carries banners that read Fides et Puritas, faith and purity. The Sisters of Battle bring up the rear, chanting, their bolters held like crosses. It's a pageant of purification, meant to imprint on everyone's mind that the Imperium has not just retaken their world, but also their hearts. The outcome of all this intense spiritual focus is a population that, by and large, becomes fervently loyal, sometimes fanatically so. There's a psychological phenomenon where survivors of trauma often cling strongly to something that gives them structure. The Imperial Creed provides that structure in spades. On Solace Tertius, many who endured the nightmare now define themselves as the most devout of the devout, determined to prove they will never fall again. This pleases the Imperium greatly, a once wayward planet turning into a beacon of zeal. Of course, a cynic would note that those who weren't fully brainwashed or convinced have either been executed or are in hiding. The ones left are either true believers or good at pretending. Over time, pretense often turns into reality as propaganda does its work. Loyalty testing merges into this as well. The Inquisition might administer formal tests, trial by creed. Perhaps they organize a scenario where a statue of a chaos god is presented to a group as a trap. If anyone flinches or shows recognition or, throne forbid, reverence, they are immediately outed. But more elegantly, they rely on the Church's influence. In confessions, priests glean who might still harbor heretical ideas. Such intel is quietly passed to the Ordo Hereticus agents who remain. Yes, even after the major purge, you can be sure a few undercover Inquisition operatives remain indefinitely to monitor things. All in all, within months, Solace Tertius transforms into something paradoxically more devout than it likely ever was before falling to chaos. It's a known pattern. Worlds that are reclaimed often swing to extremes of penitence and zeal, almost as if making amends for their previous lapse. The Ecclesiarchy encourages this, even demands it. They might declare the planet a penitent world for a time, meaning its people must observe special penances annually. Perhaps every year on the anniversary of liberation, the entire population must fast for a day and flagellate themselves in mourning for those who died in heresy. It's grim, yes, but it's how the Imperium ensures the lesson sinks deep and never fades. Before we conclude this section, it's worth highlighting a heartening, if somber, scene that encapsulates reconstruction of faith. In the rubble of a village chapel out in the hinterlands, a lone missionary priest stands before a small gathering of locals. He has salvaged a partially burned Imperial infantryman's uplifting primer, a common Imperial Guard field prayer book, and reads aloud a passage about the Emperor's protection. The villagers bow heads, one or two silently weep, perhaps remembering relatives executed yesterday by the purge. The priest then says gently, "We commend their souls to the Emperor. They suffer no longer. We, the living, will carry on in duty and faith." He then produces nails and wood and repairs the simple wooden aquila that hung above the chapel door. With villagers' help, he raises it up high amidst the ruins. Sunlight breaks through clouds and illuminates the aquila for a moment. The people gasp. It feels like a divine sign. "See," the priest smiles. His light returns to Solace Tertius. The villagers nod. Some even manage smiles. It is in these small moments that one realizes why the Imperium goes to such lengths. For all the brutality, the end goal is a world that once again believes, and thus will behave. A populace unified in faith won't welcome chaos again. They'll likely fight it to the death should it ever return. That is the hope, anyway. Faith is both a shield for their souls and a chain binding them to Imperial rule. In the Warhammer 40K universe, these two things are inseparable. Thus, Solace Tertius is on its way to becoming a world of the faithful once more. The cathedrals will be rebuilt bigger than before. the daily life of every citizen now infused with prayer and penance. They have seen darkness and been brought back to the light, and none shall doubt the God Emperor again, not if they wish to draw another breath. Chaos broke their bodies, and the Imperium mended their minds in its own uncompromising way. Life under the eagle's eye, the fate of the people. With the purges done, the land cleansed, and faith rekindled, what is daily life like for the average citizen of a reclaimed world? In a word, harsh but hopeful, or at least that's the intended narrative. The people of Solace Tertius now find themselves living in a strange interlude that is neither peace nor open war. It's a period of martial law under an imperial banner, with heavy scrutiny but also slow normalization. Civilians, most are homeless or displaced, given the destruction. Tent cities have sprung up in the hab blocks that were cleared of rubble. Families crowd under tarpaulins emblazoned with the symbol of the Administratum Relief Aid. The ration lines are long, food is simple but at least existent. Unlike under chaos, where many starved or subsisted on grotesque provisions, now the Imperium has shipped in standard ration packs. People trade stories as they queue for their daily allotment of NutriPaste. There's an odd mix of trauma and resilience visible. Children, perhaps too young to fully grasp what happened, play amidst debris, making toys from spent bolter shell casings and ration tins. Their laughter is a small miracle in the gloom. Adults, on the other hand, carry haunted expressions. They have lost so much, and yet, in typical human fashion, they try to rebuild a semblance of normal life. A makeshift market emerges. One enterprising woman salvages cloth and starts sewing armbands with the Aquila. Every loyal citizen wants one now to show their devotion. Another roasts something that might be rat meat on a fear and sells skewers, not exactly approved by the Munitorum, but the soldiers tacitly allow small entrepreneurship as it keeps people busy and fed. However, the weight of Imperial oversight is always felt. Adeptus Arbites patrols, the Imperium's law enforcers, march down these market lanes, faces hidden behind skull-visored helms, shock mauls in hand. They make sure no unauthorized gatherings form. A crowd can become a riot after all. A curfew remains in effect after nightfall. Arbites with cyber mastiff hounds enforce it, prowling for any stragglers. The loudspeakers atop poles in every camp periodically blare messages. Citizens, your safety is guaranteed by your compliance. Report any suspicious whispers of heresy. The Emperor is watching. It's as if the Imperium wants to ensure constant vigilance, an understandable stance, given the planet's recent past, but it creates an atmosphere of uneasy calm. The Administratum has taken over administrative duties swiftly. We see scrivener teams conducting a new census. Each survivor is fingerprinted, logged, and given a citizen ident code on a parchment slip. For many, this is the first time in years they have any official recognition beyond being prey for chaos. The scribes, hunched, ink-stained individuals with data slates, ask endless questions. Name, lineage, occupation, any deformities, any contact with warp phenomena. A delicate way of asking if they saw or did something heretical. These records are compiled to assess tithe obligations and resources. Already, administratum clerks are calculating what imperial tithe grade the planet will be now, post-calamity. Almost certainly it will be lowered in the short term, because output has dropped and population is decimated, but some in the administratum push to increase the tithe in future years as a form of punishment for the planet's failure to remain loyal. It's a quiet, bureaucratic vengeance. They might classify the world as penitent, requiring it to supply, say, an extra regiment of Astra Militarum as penance once it recovers. For now, though, immediate demands are more pressing, rebuilding essential services. Water purification stations, likely destroyed by war, are being reactivated by Mechanicus and local labor. Power grids are in tatters. Many rely on generatoria set up by the Guard, so nights are dark and cold in most places. The Administratum sets strict work schedules for survivors. Yes, work begins almost immediately. Able-bodied citizens are organized into labor details to clear rubble, repair plumbing, dig graves, and help build their new shelters. There's no idle sitting allowed. Idleness breeds reflection, and reflection might wander to dark places. Better to keep them toiling, both to accelerate reconstruction and to keep them mentally occupied. Trauma and mental health, not that the Imperium uses such terms, are addressed in the only way the Imperium knows, through discipline and denial. Some individuals inevitably crack. A man wakes up screaming every night, remembering a demon ripping his brother apart. The prescribed solution? The Ministorum gives him a devotional. Recite the litany against fear 50 times before bed. If that doesn't work, an apothecary might dose him with a mild sedative, or, if he becomes disruptive, lobotomize him into a servitor. A fate not uncommon for those whose minds are shattered beyond repair. The Imperium has little patience for PTSD. You either get over it and channel it into hatred for the enemy, or you become a problem to be solved. For many, ironically, the intense religious activity does help them cope. Believing their suffering had purpose or that the Emperor saved them offers solace. The ones who can't accept that do not fare well. We note quietly that the suicide rate in the first months is high. Some survivors simply lose the will to go on or cannot live with what they did to survive. The Ecclesiarchy sternly preaches that suicide is a sin, of course. Nevertheless, bodies of those who take their own lives are found occasionally. These are quickly and quietly removed, and their names not recorded in official histories. Justice and settling scores. After any occupation, there's the matter of collaborators, those who aided the enemy. The Inquisition executed many prominent ones, but on a local level, people know who in their neighborhood cozied up to the heretics to gain favor. Now, grudges come to fore. A group of townsfolk might corner a man who served as the enemy's informant, seeking vigilante justice. The Arbites make it clear. Mob violence is not tolerated. Only the Emperor, through his agents, dispenses justice. But in practice, a few such incidents happen behind the scenes. One collaborator is found lynched, hanging from a lamppost with a sign, "Traitor," on his chest. The Arbites cut him down and publicly scold the crowd that gathered, but privately, one suspects the Arbites don't pursue the killers too hard. It's one less criminal for them to process. Still, to maintain order, the Adeptus Arbites courts set up tribunals for civilian informants and minor collaborators. Ironically, more due process than the Inquisition gave, but still just a formality. Most are sentenced to servitude or hard labor, rather than immediate execution, unless their crime was particularly heinous. The Imperium needs every hand for rebuilding, even the tainted ones, after suitable punishment. So you might see chain gangs of identified collaborators doing the most dangerous reconstruction tasks, clearing minefields, handling unstable debris, under armed guard. Redemption through labor is the slogan given, a concept hammered home from pulpits daily. The Astra Militarum presence remains strong. Though front-line regiments will move on to the next war once the planet is secured, some forces stay as a garrison. Perhaps a regiment of the Imperial Guard raised from a nearby world is assigned as occupation force. They establish barracks in whatever sturdy structures remain or in fortifiable camps. Tanks patrol the outskirts to discourage any thought of chaos insurgents trying a guerrilla campaign. At this point, organized resistance is nearly impossible. The heretics have been crushed, but it's standard Imperial paranoia to remain vigilant. Soldiers at checkpoints verify papers and direct traffic of aid convoys. The common folk mostly view the Guard now with gratitude, they're heroes of liberation, mixed with a bit of fear they will shoot if provoked. Interestingly, the Imperium often raises new military units from worlds that have been through such crucibles if the populace is deemed pure enough. For example, after the Sabbat worlds were reclaimed, some of those worlds began supplying regiments to the Guard once pacified. On Solace Tertius, it's too early for that. They're still just trying to survive, but the seeds are planted. The commissars note the youths who show spirit and loyalty. The idea of forming a new PDF, Planetary Defense Force, from survivors is floated. Indeed, the Inquisition might insist that any new PDF recruits undergo extreme vetting, but eventually the world must defend itself again. So, recruitment drives begin. Giant posters appear, miraculously printed by a functioning administratum press, showing Imperial Guardsmen raising the Aquila flag with captions like, "Enlist to protect our future. Never again." Many young men and women, fueled by vengeance for what they endured, sign up. They want to take the fight to the enemy somewhere, or at least ensure it never returns here. These initial volunteer militias will be trained by the remaining Guard officers. It's a bit sad. They are traumatized survivors turning right around into soldiers. But that's the grim truth of the Imperium. War spares no one, and the traumatized often make fiercely motivated fighters. The commissars deliver stirring speeches to these recruits. Chaos stole your families, your homes. Now you will be the Emperor's vengeance. You will stand guard so that their sacrifice was not in vain. Tears and cheers result. Resource reallocation now kicks into a higher gear. The Munitorum examines what the planet can supply immediately. If it's an agri-world, are the fields salvageable to send food to other war zones? If a hive, what factories can be rebooted to churn out ammo? On Solace Tertius, a hive industrial mix in our depiction, perhaps one sector's forges survived or can be repaired within months. Mechanicus and indentured locals are set to work triple shifts, once power is stable, to get at least a trickle of production going. The first output may even be used right here, new hab prefabs, construction materials, but soon they'll be expected to resume meeting quotas to support the wider Imperium. In tandem, the planet receives aid shipments, but not charity. Never think that. The administratum calls it replenishment of vital assets. Freighters drop off prefabricated building components, medical supplies, and sometimes manpower like the Imperial Reconstruction Corps, basically labor units that travel to rebuild worlds. In exchange, Solace Tertius signs away future tithe considerations. It's understood they owe a debt now. There's also an understanding that as soon as possible, Solace will need to contribute conscripts to the Guard to make up for the losses the Imperium took retaking it. Indeed, sometimes in a dark twist, the Imperium will conscript large numbers of the very survivors as soon as they are declared clean, shipping them off as new Imperial Guard units or labor corps for other war efforts. Why? Because those with nothing left and a vendetta against chaos can be useful elsewhere, and it also reduces the burden of feeding idle populations. In our scenario, maybe not immediately, the population is too traumatized to fight well yet, but down the line, a year or two, Solace Tertius might raise a regiment proudly called the Solace Redeemers or something, who will fight in the Emperor's name with zeal, hoping to wash the stain of their home's heresy by shedding blood on another battlefield. Inquisitorial presence doesn't vanish either. Officially, after a time, the Ordo Hereticus may downgrade the emergency status and withdraw overt operatives, but they always leave some agents embedded. Perhaps an Inquisitor adopts this world as part of their watch, or leaves a trusted acolyte behind within the governor's staff. The people might not know it, but an inquisitorial rosette could pop up at any hint of cult resurgence. A year from now, if someone dares paint a chaos star in a dark alley, you can bet a secret informant will report it, and a covert strike team will eradicate the budding problem swiftly. Eternal vigilance is the watchword. Lingering corruption among people can also mean physical after effects. Some women who are pregnant during warp exposure give birth to deformed or stillborn infants in the months after liberation. It's tragic, but those things happen. The Ecclesiarchy calls it Emperor's mercy cleaning the taint when a mutant baby is stillborn, a cruel rationalization. These harsh measures are to ensure no trace of Chaos's touch enters the gene pool. Now, not all is perfectly grim. There are genuine humanitarian moments too. Some Imperial personnel show kindness within the allowed limits. A guardsman shares his amasec liquor ration with an old man to warm him on a cold night. A sister hospitaller runs a small orphanage corner in a med tent, comforting war orphans with gentle stories of the Emperor's saints. An administratum clerk, while stamping citizen cards, sneaks an extra food chit to a widow with many children. These small mercies aren't sanctioned by any official decree, but they happen because individuals still have hearts. The Imperium is a machine, yes, but it's run by people, and not all are unfeeling. Another facet: reunion and loss. As communications restore, survivors try to find loved ones. Bulletin boards go up, lists of names in refugee camps, units of soldiers, etc. Sometimes there's joy. A brother thought dead finds his sister alive in another camp thanks to these lists. When such reunions occur, even battle-hardened guardsmen applaud or remove caps respectfully. In a world of horror, a family reunited is a small victory for humanity, but often the lists confirm worst fears. Many scroll through casualty rosters delivered by the administratum and find all their family names under deceased or missing, presumed dead. Grief is everywhere. Mass funeral rites are held weekly now that bodies are being identified, when possible, and interred. The Ecclesiarchy officiates these ceremonies with great solemnity, lines of coffins draped in Imperial flags, incense, chanting, painting those who died as martyrs whether they were or not. This helps the living assign meaning to their loss and further binds them to Imperial ideology. Your loved ones are heroes in the Emperor's sight now. Cultural reset. The world's culture is essentially being reset to factory settings, Imperial baseline. Any signs of the unique local culture that contradicted Imperial norms and might have facilitated chaos are suppressed. But harmless local traditions are sometimes encouraged if they can be framed as always having been Emperor-loving. For example, if the planet had a harvest festival, it's reinstated but now dedicated to giving thanks to the Emperor for deliverance. New holidays are added, likely a Liberation Day each year, a somber holiday of fasting to remember the occupation, and a triumphant parade to celebrate the Emperor's victory. Gradually, daily life regains a rhythm. Wake up at dawn to a broadcast prayer. Work crews rebuild under the eye of foremen. Midday, everyone pauses as the Ecclesiarchy bells ring. A mandated moment of reflection and a quick prayer of thanks, like saying grace but for surviving another morning. Then back to work or lessons. Evenings, curfew. People huddle in tents telling stories or listening to a preacher read from the lives of saints. It's regimented, but structure is comfort after chaos. They know if they follow the rules, the Emperor's rules, things get a bit better each day. If they don't, well, they've seen what happens. Economically, the planet is in ruin, but the Imperium doesn't truly operate on money at the individual level in times like this. It's a command economy of rations and assigned labor. Eventually, when things stabilize, they'll reintroduce the usual feudal system. A new governor, noble titles, maybe the surviving bourgeois reclaim their manufactoria. But likely much of the old hierarchy is gone, so the Imperium might import new ruling class members. Maybe a decorated Imperial Guard colonel is appointed governor, common practice to reward a loyal officer, along with some administratum bureaucrats to form a council. These new elites may be outsiders with no ties to locals, which helps ensure loyalty to Terra, not sympathy to the populace. It can breed resentment, but after a chaos rebellion, trust in locals is thin. One can't help but notice another twist of fate. Under chaos, ironically, some of the populace might have initially experienced liberation from imperial tithes or rigid laws, only to descend into nightmare. Now, back under the Imperium, they have lost some personal freedoms again, but they at least have stability and a promise of order. For many, that trade is more than acceptable. They've learned the hard way that the freedom chaos offered was worse than hell, and that the imperial yoke, for all its weight at least, is familiar and relatively predictable. In the war-torn galaxy, most just want to live without monsters literally eating them. So if that means living under strict imperial rule, so be it. Finally, let's talk about the emotional landscape. There is trauma, yes, but also a fierce determination never to fall again. The slogan, "Never Again," might as well be plastered on every street. The average citizen's greatest fear now is not the Inquisition, not even hunger, but that chaos might somehow come back. This fear is carefully massaged into constant alertness. Everyone becomes a watcher. Paranoid, perhaps, but effectively an unpaid auxiliary of the Ordo Hereticus. In taverns, once they reopen, even a small, still-brewing saccharine alcohol runs because people need a drink. If someone even jokes about the old regime, they'll get glared into silence or reported. People police each other's purity, both out of genuine fervor and to avoid collective punishment if any heresy arises. The planetary psyche thus transforms into something like an abused victim who has sworn undying loyalty to their rescuer. It's complicated. Is it love of the Emperor, or fear of chaos, or fear of the Emperor's punishments? Probably all three, woven tight until inseparable. But functionally, the Imperium has achieved what it wanted: a population that will die before letting chaos take root again, and that will diligently contribute to the Imperium's needs. As months turn to years, Solace Tertius will slowly rebuild its cities from ruins. The camps will give way to new hab blocks, perhaps simpler prefabs at first. The factories will hum again. Children will grow up with state schooling drilling loyalty into them. The Inquisition will slip into the shadows but maintain a dossier on the planet. The Administratum will incrementally raise the tithe back to normal, maybe even overshoot, to compensate for the trouble caused. After all, by imperial logic, this world owes a blood debt to the Emperor's armies, who bled to reclaim it. And the people? They will have kids, plant memorial trees in honor of the dead, tell stories of how the Emperor's angels, the Space Marines, descended from the sky to smite the wicked. Over time, the horror will fade into legend. Perhaps in a century, a young Solace citizen will hardly believe the tale that demons once stalked their streets. It will sound like a distant nightmare or a morality fable. "Mind your prayers, child," a mother might say, "for you know what happened long ago when our world forgot its faith." The scars remain, but scar tissue is tough. Solace Tertius is scarred and tougher for it. In truth, some nightmares may still lurk, and we will explore those next, the lingering shadows that even the brightest new dawn cannot entirely banish. Lingering shadows, the taint that remains. Even under the triumphant proclamations of purity and the diligent rebuilding, some shadows linger on Solace Tertius. The forces of chaos are not easily forgotten, nor entirely banished in a single sweep. This final substantive chapter examines the unseen, the unspoken, and the unresolved remnants of the planet's brush with damnation. For all the Imperium's efforts, a whisper of the dark often remains, whether in the soul, the soil, or the very air. Firstly, consider the hidden cultists. It would be naive to assume every Chaos adherent was caught in the purge. Among the populace, a handful of die-hard cult members likely survived by blending in, feigning repentance, or fleeing to remote areas. Out in the wastelands beyond the hive, small bands of fugitives might be hiding in cave systems or ruined farmstead bunkers. These surviving cultists are leaderless and on the run, but they are still dangerous like wounded snakes. They nurse hatred for the Imperium and might try to sabotage the reconstruction quietly. We hear reports of a generator mysteriously exploding one night, sabotage suspected. Patrols occasionally find strange symbols scratched under bridges or in sewer walls, possibly left by a cultist before disappearing again. The local PDF and Arbites now have the slow, grinding job of hunting these stragglers. It's a cat-and-mouse game. In truth, such remnants rarely pose a huge threat once the main cult is broken, but the Imperium can't allow even a single heretic to seed future trouble, so they will be relentlessly pursued. Over the next year, one by one, these hidden cultists will be captured or killed, often betrayed by desperate moves, like trying to steal supplies, or by informants looking to gain favor. But until that final heretic is extirpated, an undercurrent of dread lingers. Ordinary citizens whisper at night, "They say some of the devil worshippers still walk among us." And parents keep children close, invoking the Emperor's protection against the gutter lurkers. It's almost a folktale boogeyman, except it's real. Then there's the warp's echo. Though the Mechanicus and Psychers cleansed the big anomalies, regions heavily touched by the warp can retain a kind of psychic bruise. Certain areas might be permanently off. People avoid an old warehouse because those who sleep there report nightmares of gibbering voices. A stretch of forest outside the city, what little remains of forest, is now twisted and dead. Animals refuse to go near it. The locals name it the Cursed Grove. The Inquisition considered firebombing it, but decided constant prayer vigils would suffice. So monthly, a procession goes out to that grove and circles it, singing hymns, to gradually wear down whatever malevolence clings to it. Will it work? Hard to say, but it keeps people feeling proactive. Corrupted infrastructure is another specter. For example, the central cogitator databanks of the city had been tampered with by the enemy, perhaps infected by a scrap code demon. The Mechanicus cleaned it, yes, but do they know if some lurking code curse remains? One day, an administratum adept is inputting population data and the machine spirit spasms. Screens flash an 8-pointed star before returning to normal. It's reported and the tech priests purge the system again, but it's unsettling. As a precaution, many older tech devices are being replaced entirely. Yet the cost and time means some may still harbor a ghost in the machine, lingering fear and corruption in hearts. Not everyone can flip allegiance so easily. A very few might even secretly miss aspects of chaos rule, the personal advantages they gained, or the nihilistic freedoms. These folk obviously hide such thoughts, but in dark corners some might mutter that life wasn't all bad under the Thrall King, we had meat and ale. Immediately another will hiss, "Shut up, you'll get us killed." But the thought was voiced. The Ecclesiarchy and public enthusiasm effectively silenced most dissent, but deep down, human nature being what it is, someone will resent the Imperium's return. Perhaps because an Inquisitor executed their loved one unjustly in the Purge. That resentment is a seed of potential future heresy unless smothered. The Imperium's answer is to smother it through total cultural saturation, but seeds can be resilient. Chaos, in some form, will try to creep back in, as it ever does. Maybe years later, some youth hears a half-remembered chaos lullaby from his deranged grandmother and finds it curious rather than horrifying. And so the cycle of corruption might start anew, though likely on a small scale. On to physical health. Corruption of bodies, warp exposure, and the deprivations caused many illnesses and mutations. Nurgle's plagues might have left a mark. Even if demons are gone, some lingering diseases can persist. The Adeptus Mechanicus biologists have to combat a mysterious wasting disease that is cropping up in pockets, likely a hangover from a chaos-engineered virus. It's not contagious enough to be a pandemic. The life-eater viruses used in Exterminatus are far worse. But a cluster of villagers fall ill with blackened lesions. The Imperial remedy is brutal but effective. Quarantine the village, and a regiment's flamers purify it, both disease and patients. Of course, this is kept hush-hush from the general population, framed as a routine training exercise if noticed at all. But it shows that even after victory, the planet itself may be a bit poisonous for a while. Crops grown in certain soil come up twisted. Those fields are salted and left fallow. Lakes where chaos rituals occurred are drained or dosed with purifying chemicals. The world gradually heals, but a wise Imperial commander remains alert that a tainted artifact or latent spell could wreak havoc if overlooked. Demonological aftershocks. In prior chaos occupancy, minor warp rifts might have flickered open. Even though they're shut, the veil between reality and the warp could remain thin in some locales. There are anecdotal accounts. A pair of guards on night patrol near the old battlefield swore they saw shapes in the fog and heard faint demonic laughter. Response? Increase the patrols, set up holy warding icons at intervals, little shrines on the roadside, and instruct troops that it's just war nerves. Nonetheless, the Ordo Malleus keeps an Exterminatus contingency in their back pocket for years. If ever signs emerge that the planet is becoming unstable, say a growing warp storm or a hidden demon resurgence, they won't hesitate to recommend wiping it outright next time. The fact Solace Tertius was spared Exterminatus was partly strategic. The world was too valuable to destroy. But if it backslides, the Imperium's tolerance will be low. Many worlds reclaimed from chaos live under this silent Damocles sword. One big heresy incident, and the next liberation will be orbital bombardment, to be sure. The people may not know that, but their leaders do. The new governor is likely explicitly warned by the Inquisition. If you fail to keep this world clean, we will cleanse it completely. A sobering thought. Inquisitorial purges continued. Quietly, the Inquisition will likely run periodic checks for years. Maybe a year or two later, they'll orchestrate a test. Slip a chaos icon into someone's path and see who picks it up or tries to hide it. Or they'll interrogate random citizens. A black ship might swing by not only for psychers, but to gauge the psychic health of the populace. The presence of any latent witches would be cause for concern. They might have awakened during the trauma of war that often happens. Indeed, the black ships, the vessels that collect psychers for the Imperium, come relatively soon after the war. The rationale, the chaos turmoil, likely caused some uncontrolled psychers to emerge among the population. If one thing terrifies the Imperium's local commanders now, it's an unsanctioned psyker causing a possession or warp breach after they went through all this effort. So, in camps and habs, suddenly arbitrators backed by Sisters of Silence, psychic null operatives if any available, will raid and grab certain individuals, those flagged with psychic potential. These poor souls, already shaken, are taken on to the black ship in chains, mouths gagged by warded muzzles. It's said they will be tested, maybe trained if strong enough, or fed to the Emperor's soul if not. Either way, they're gone from the planet. The citizens witness this and understand. No witchcraft will be tolerated. Usually they're grateful because uncontrolled psychers are feared. One must mention the psychological shadow of the Inquisition specifically. On Armageddon, even after the war, people lived knowing the Inquisition had nearly destroyed them, and indeed many survivors were shipped to camps or exiled. On Solace Tertius, those allowed to remain may feel a conflicting gratitude and fear toward the Inquisition. A common sentiment: thank the Emperor for saving us, but Emperor, preserve us from drawing the Inquisition's eye again. It's like living under a stern god, comforting from external threats but terrifying if his gaze turns to you. Over time, this might ease if the Inquisition visibly recedes, but the specter remains. Possibly Inquisitor becomes an almost taboo word locally. They refer to them in euphemism like the Eye or the Questioners. The Ecclesiarchy helps by portraying the Inquisition not as enemy, but as the Emperor's divine surgeons who cut out infection. People try to accept that logic, but nobody ever forgets seeing neighbors summarily executed in the Purge. That memory instills both obedience and trauma for generations. Children grow up hearing "behave" or "the Inquisitor will get you." Now, as months turn into the first year and then beyond, the extraordinary measures relax gradually. Curfews might be lifted once crime is minimal. The military presence might scale down, leaving local enforcers in charge. But it's likely Solace Tertius will never fully return to how it was pre-chaos. It will always be a bit more militarized, a bit paranoid, and intensely pious. In a way, the Chaos invasion permanently changed its identity. Some worlds after reclamation become known as Shrine Worlds or Martyr Worlds because so many died for the Emperor there. Pilgrims from other systems might eventually travel to see the sites of heroic last stands or miracles. The Ecclesiarchy could push to designate a particular site on Solace as a shrine of deliverance, building a grand basilica decorated with frescoes of the planet's liberation, encouraging the faithful to tour it and be inspired. This ironically brings an influx of off-world pilgrims once warp routes are safer, which helps the local economy and morale. The people once shunned as heresy-tainted can now take pride. Our world is a testament to the Emperor's glory. This is how the Imperium transforms a tragedy into propaganda gold. For example, Cadia's fall in the lore is turned into a rallying cry. The planet broke before the god did. Solace's fall and rise would similarly be spun. Solace Tertius fell to darkness, but was illuminated once more by the Emperor's light, a reminder that no matter how dark the night, his dawn will come. That's the official line repeated in sermons and motivational tracts. However, among the high echelons, there's also a note in some archive that says, "Monitor Solace Tertius for several centuries. Risk of recidivism is non-zero." This is not unique. Many worlds recovered from rebellion remain under subtle suspicion forever. Some inquisitors of a Puritan bent argue that once tainted, a world is never wholly trustworthy. They might have preferred exterminatus or complete population replacement. In absence of that, they may occasionally refresh the population. For instance, orchestrating a mass conscription or colonization effort, send a huge portion of Solace's people to other worlds, spreading out the possibly tainted, and bring in colonists from ultra-pious worlds to dilute any remaining heresy in the gene pool. Sounds far-fetched, but the Imperium has done similar population reshufflings historically when uneasy, though usually only on smaller scales due to difficulty. More practically, the Inquisition might demand a permanent office on-world, a fortress or safe house with a garrison of elite stormtroopers, ready to quash any sign of cult resurgence. As life normalizes, loyalty tests become more bureaucratic. Every year on the liberation date, perhaps citizens must renew an oath in writing, stamped by local officials, basically renewing their loyalty license. It's symbolic, but also a paper trail in case someone refuses or avoids it. The lack of an oath certificate could land one in an interrogation. One more lingering effect. The new generation will be shaped by tales of this time. They will either be the most loyal imaginable, or occasionally, if the Imperium's regime is too oppressive, perhaps a few youths romanticize that maybe not everything the heretics said was false. Typically, given the horror, very few would think that. Yet, historically, cycles of rebellion can repeat if underlying issues aren't solved. Did the Imperium solve them? Usually by brute force and fear, yes, in the short run. But if life decades later is still grim-dark, which in 40K it always is, some future malcontent might look at the tyranny and, not having personally seen the chaos horrors, foolishly dabble in forbidden ideas again. That is how chaos might creep back in generations down the line, through the disaffected. The Imperium counters that by ensuring the story is passed on, unvarnished. Every school kid will be shown picked captures of the flayed bodies and mutant beasts to scare them straight. It's like how on some worlds the Inquisition shows soft civilians evidence of genestealer, cult atrocities so they understand why compliance is needed. Fear educates where wisdom might not. In our context, though, these are far future speculations. In the immediate aftermath, the planet stands firmly under the Emperor's heel, and by most accounts, they're grateful for it compared to the alternative. A visiting Imperial official a few years later might remark, "Morale on Solace Tertius is exemplary, the populace is intensely devout, tithe productivity at 85% and rising. Threat of chaos resurgence minimal, though Inquisitorial observers remain vigilant." In short, a success story, if a costly one. From orbit, the planet now shows scars visible from space, huge impact craters, where orbital strikes or war damage occurred, vast tracts of burned land. But new lights twinkle at night where cities relight their grids. The orbital defense station, if one existed, is being repaired by the Navy, a sign that the Imperium expects this world to stand on its own again. One final anecdote. In a quiet corner of a mass graveyard outside the capital, a single Adeptus Astartes, an Ultramarines captain, say, visits incognito. He was part of the Liberation Force. Now that the war moves on elsewhere, he returns briefly to pay respects to brothers and local PDF who died in a last stand. He sees the world recovering, children playing amidst ruins. A local child approaches the giant armored figure. Maybe he's not fully incognito, in partial armor. The child asks, "Mister, are you one of the angels who saved us?" The Space Marine, a warrior hardened by centuries of combat, pauses. He simply nods and tells the child, "The Emperor saved you, child. I was his instrument." The kid perhaps doesn't fully understand, but smiles and salutes clumsily, an imitation of what he's seen soldiers do. The Marine returns the salute briefly, then departs for orbit, content that the planet he bled for is crawling back from the abyss. The child runs off to his friends, bragging, "I met an angel of death." In that moment, we see that hope, albeit a militaristic one, has taken root again. Lingering corruption exists, yes, but ultimately life prevails, scarred, stern, and unyielding. The people of Solace Tertius will carry the memory of darkness in their hearts forever, but that memory will fuel their hatred of chaos and love of the Emperor. In the 41st millennium, that's perhaps the best outcome one can hope for after such a nightmare. And so, with lingering shadows acknowledged and kept at bay by unwavering watchfires, we move to conclude our chronicle of this world's reclamation. The story of Solace Tertius is a sobering testament to what the Imperium of Man endures and enforces to protect the galaxy from chaos, a story of destruction and reconstruction, of despair and faith, of cruelty and salvation, all entwined. Conclusion: dawn over a scorched horizon. In the end, Solace Tertius stands reclaimed, a battered, chastened world firmly back in the Emperor's embrace. The ashes of war have given rise to the iron flower of Imperial order, watered by the blood of countless martyrs and the tears of survivors. What has happened here will never be forgotten, not by the populace, who will recount the day of liberation and the trials after in hushed voices for generations, not by the Imperium, which records the planet's name in its annals, a world that strayed, suffered, and was purged clean at unimaginable cost. As a documentary narrator, I have tried to maintain a measure of detachment, but the story of Solace Tertius is one that stirs the soul and chills the blood in equal measure. We saw innocence trampled under demonic fury. Then we saw righteousness, cold and unyielding, restore a harsh peace. We walked through cities of the dead where silence screamed louder than any battle. We watched the Inquisition's flame scour corruption at the price of mercy. We felt the Mechanicus' zealous precision as they rebuilt brick by sanctified brick. We heard the choirs of the Ecclesiarchy uplift hearts, even as the memory of screams lingered in the air. And we stood with the people in their fear and their faith as they navigated the razor's edge between damnation and deliverance. Solace Tertius is but one world among a million, yet its tale is universal across the Imperium. Where there is chaos, the Imperium will respond with unrelenting force and unshakable faith, or if need be, with utter annihilation. Here, the Imperium chose to redeem rather than destroy. It was not an act of kindness, but of calculation and duty. And through that choice, life, though brutalized, was given a chance to continue. As the planet's first post-reclamation sunrise breaks over the horizon, we envision the scene. The sun's rays illuminate a landscape of ruin and renewal. A freshly forged Aquila spire atop the governor's palace ruin glints in gold. In the streets below, citizens stir from their cots, bowing heads in morning prayer as a vox hailer proclaims the emperor's grace. Children dutifully recite catechisms taught by their teachers, their high voices carrying a note of tentative hope. Factories chug to life, their smoke less black than the burning pyres of months past. In the fields, seeds are sown in soil once soaked with blood, a promise that something will grow again. And guarding it all, on the perimeter walls, Imperial sentries watch the dawn with lost guns at the ready and hymns on their lips, vigilant that the darkness never returns. In that dawn light, the planet is quiet, not the sullen, terrified quiet of oppression, but a determined stillness, the quiet of people who have collectively exhaled after a long nightmare and now steel themselves for the hard work of living on. Our narrator's slightly sarcastic tone softens here into one of somber respect. For these people have been through hell and come out the other side, scarred but unbroken in spirit. They endured and they rebuild. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is indeed only war, but there is also the indomitable will of humanity to survive and find meaning in that endless struggle. Solace Tertius's saga closes with a simple truth hammered home. Chaos may conquer worlds, but it cannot easily conquer humanity's faith when the Imperium is willing to pay any price to restore it. Reclamation is not just the reclaiming of land or cities. It is the reclaiming of hearts and minds, one painful lesson at a time. The Emperor's light has purged the shadows here, and though some darkness lingers at the margins, it will find no refuge in the hearts of Solace's people ever again. They have looked into the abyss, and by the grace of the God Emperor and the uncompromising might of his servants, the abyss blinked first. As our documentary account ends, we leave Solace Tertius with a final image, a line of pilgrims, survivors, and soldiers together, climbing a hill at dusk to plant a beacon fire atop it. The bonfire ignites, orange flames licking the sky, a beacon visible for miles. One by one, others on distant hills light their own fires in response, until dozens of points of light dot the darkened landscape. This is an ancient custom reborn signal fires to declare that the night has fallen, but mankind holds the light. In a slightly wry aside, I note that nothing is more human in the 41st millennium than fighting the darkness with literal fire. But it serves. Anyone still lurking in shadow is put on notice, and everyone loyal takes heart. The camera of our mind's eye pans upward from those hills of fire to the starry heavens where orbiting ships bear witness. Somewhere out there, the war goes on. It always does. But for a brief moment here on this reclaimed world, there is a measure of peace hard-won. It is a grim, heavily guarded peace, full of memories of horror and the weight of duty. Yet peace it is in the only form the Imperium affords, the peace of absolute enforced order. And so, with fire and faith guarding the future, and the echoes of tragedy slowly fading into history, we conclude the chronicle of Solace Tertius, a world saved from damnation by the ruthless benevolence of the Imperium of Man. In the nightmare gloom of Warhammer 40,000, this is what victory looks like. Not a return to paradise, but a climb back from oblivion to the familiar purgatory of Imperial rule. It is harsh, it is heavy with sacrifice, but it endures. The Imperium has reclaimed Solace Tertius, and Solace Tertius has, in turn, reclaimed its soul. The final lines of our documentary echo this paradoxical triumph. This world will bear its scars forever, but it lives under the Emperor's light once more, and in the grim darkness of the far future, that alone is miracle enough.